are on the operating budget. And right now, we are at an estimated tax rate increase of 2.6%. We were sort of going back over that and taking any questions on that at this point. Anything more? I had a question just regarding the draws from reserve, and there was 85,800 in 2023, and it says tree assessment, but that's all of this year's, like the tree assessment is for this year, the gas testing was that the last year? No, that'd be for the upcoming year.
Yeah.
And then we got the other one for the pipe last year's wasn't done.
It's the same issue.
Huh?
The 40,000 is the same issue.
Oh, okay.
So for the operating budget, like basically the operating budget works different than capital. At the end of the year, whatever's not spent, either goes in the surplus or it has to be funded in next year's budget.
Yeah.
So any of the carry reports have to be specifically reapproved. So it was provided last year in the budget.
Okay.
The work wasn't done, so it has to be reapproved.
So that's, and last year we were anticipating 85.8, and this year it's 71.5.
Right.
Okay.
And now that 85.8 in 223, 40,000 was for the cathodic testing. So substantially, it's the cathodic testing that's being, if it wasn't complete, that's being carried forward. And then in 224, there's some new items that are one time.
Yeah.
So they're being funded out of basically last year's surplus.
Okay. And the other one I had, and just as a question, is debt repayment. In 2023, it was 395, and in 2024, it's the same amount. But I thought our pool was,
So to answer your question, think about how a home mortgage works. Your payment stays the same, but the balance of outstanding debt is dropping every year. So your payments in the budget are the same, but our debt levels have dropped significantly over the last number of years.
okay, but if the payments are staying the same, and we owe less money, so are those other debts getting extra payments put against them? Or is the extra money now going into reserves?
That's what happened last year. There was one debenture that fell off the books, so that was an additional contribution to reserves.
Oh, okay.
Right, so it doesn't show in the budget, but which I meant to bring, do you have a copy of the financial statements? Please grab it. I meant to do a little, I will be putting it in when the budget report comes forward, I'll be addressing that issue because it's a good news story and it doesn't show in the budget. But the debt levels, outstanding debt have dropped millions of dollars over the last 5 years. And I believe it's substantially by 2028, the town will be almost debt free. Yeah. So the next one that comes up for finally paid off will be in, there's one in, this year. Final year is 100, some debt related to the pool, so that will free up another 161,000. So in the 2025 budget, council will be asked, do you want to put that into reserves? Do you want to use it to reduce the tax rate? What do you want to do? But overall, so in 2024, it's 394,000 in debt charges. It will drop to 233. In 225, 226, and then 227, it drops to 115,000. So there will be shifts every year in that budget line downward. Totally, and the only, like the bottom line is that after 2027, 28, the town's basically debt free in 27, 28. There's one small outstanding debenture for fire truck for $40,000.
So just so I understand, in terms of how it's recorded budget-wise, like last year was 395, this year was 395, but next year with those other ones coming off,
It will be 234.
okay, and then council has a decision to either put that additional 100,000 into reserves or to lower operating costs
Do new programs,
or
whatever.
do new programs,
Yeah,
whatever,
whatever.
okay.
So in terms of the outstanding debt, the town's debt limit currently is roughly 18 million. The town has $1.5 million in total debt outstanding. That compares with roughly $4 million 5 years ago. So the debt level has dropped from 4 million down to 1.8. And it's dropping around $300,000 a year, but it doesn't show there because it's like a home mortgage. It shows as a blended payment. Your payment doesn't change. What's being applied to interest and what's being applied to principal is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So all I can say, and if I could go back to a very early slide, the town has one of the lowest debt levels in the province. So if I could just give me a second. So if you go back to the first tab, you need
The yellow one and on page
slide 19. So the good news is the debt levels are decreasing. The bad news is the assets are deteriorating at a quicker rate than the town putting money into its assets. So you can see from 214 onwards, sorry, it didn't update 223, but the percent of useful life of all our assets. So, you know, we talked about asset management. We're getting into the point of we're not optimizing the town's monies because we're letting assets depreciate to the state of we can't repair them, we got to replace them. So you see that in the sidewalks, you see that in the roads. So council really has to have some serious discussions about how much money they wanted, like as debts retiring. I would not be recommending the council that be used to lower the tax rate increase. It should be reinvested into maintaining the assets. And if you go on to slide 22, these were our municipal comparatives, but if you look at the farthest right column, excluding Grimshaw and Hannah, the town has substantially less debt than other communities. So High Prairie, we've used 12% of our debt capacity. That's probably down to 8% now because we paid down debt. But other communities are 50% or more of their debt utilization. But any of these items can't be looked in isolation. You know, if you're going to look at that, you got to look at reserve balances. You got to look at the total fiscal tools the municipality has. But if you look across the board, right, you know, the reserves are pretty good in the town. The debt levels are very low in the town compared to other communities. So there is flexibility that the town has. You may have heard a different song in the past, but here's the facts. And, you know, the issue is how do we enlighten the residents, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Those are what I was wondering about. See any other questions? So just to summarize, I know we did approved one budget, and now I know we made, I believe, a few tweaks to that, right? Like, so do we need another motion?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is right now the tax rate is standing at around 2.6%. It will modify because of the assessment information. Is council willing to move the budget forward for final approval based on the targeted 2.6% tax rate increase? Or as Councilor Martins has suggested, if you want to throw in an extra 5,000 for council training, you want to take something out, you want to make some blanket statements that, you know, to adjust what we've done, the council's done to date. If not, we're sort of ready to move it forward for formal approval.
Okay, so basically what you're saying, this is the last chance to make changes before it's formalized. So is there any issues with the budget as it's been presented? Anybody want to chat about this? If not, then we can move it ahead, and then it'll come out in one of our next meetings for formal approval, and we can get the tax notices out on time.
Well, I haven't had a chance to review the fire or the library. What was the outcome of the rec budget?
Those are included in this package that went out here.
No. No.
Right,
We
so just to back up a bit,
Okay.
each of the reps did report to a prior budget meeting, and council at one of our last 4 or 5 meetings was advised that each of these items were dealt with by the joint budget committees. I forget what the proper term is, and the budgets were recommended on the council without amendments. So whether it's the rec budget, the fire budget, or the library budget, this room had reported back to one of our budget committee meetings. The numbers are in the overall budget. The county's considering the budgets just as recommended by the joint budget committees. In terms of the museum, there is no formal joint budget, but the museum budget is the same as 2023 budget. So council can amend these budgets, then we have to advise the county that that's happened and the like, but it has been vetted through your council reps on each of the budget committees, so we'll leave it at that.
But my understanding is they're just supposed to review it, and then it comes to us to, like, do a second set of eyes on it.
So the mandate of those joint budget committees is they can amend the budgets, and if the joint committee members see it that way, they would recommend that amended budget back to their councils. So all the budgets were unanimously adopted by those joint budget committees. So in terms of the rec budget, you know, there's a few little minor changes, but you know, during my initial presentation, you know, those major impacts related to the rec budget were annotated.
Yeah, those joint budgets are awkward to deal with. There's no way around it. They're just awkward because there's two councils involved with them, and how do you deal with them to get them through?
Yeah, but the whole idea between setting those committees up, where they were to review it, you know, look at it and stuff, and then it comes back to council, and we have a look at it.
Correct. So we have the members on the committee that, you know, and for example, the rec committee look at it, and then there's the joint budget committee. So usually there's at least, yeah, I'll use recreation, there's been at least 4 members of council that have gone through that rec budget, whether it be if you're on the joint rec committee, or you're on the recreation budget committee. So that's the sort of the gist of it. There's been a few eyes on it, but yes, you're absolutely right. Then it comes to council, and council has to say yay or nay to those budgets.
The main point, you know, council can change. You know, I'm operating on the basis of what council approved in August at the committee of the whole meeting, the guidelines, the process. Those were confirmed by council. Council wants to amend the process, that's fine. And that could be, you know, another topic area related to, you know, one of the upcoming committee of the whole meetings. But the information in the direct budget, the library budget, the museum, it's all been incorporated in the budget documents that we've been dealing with. So any significant variances related to those, any of those areas, if you go back to tab 1, any significant variances are detailed in tab 1 that's been dealt with by council numerous times.
Sasha.
So, just clarification, Bill, on some of these line items. So, one example, salary and employer benefits exists in our main operating budget. We can also shows up in committee budgets. So, for example, is rec salary operating or salary and employee benefits separate? Then this, is this only for,
No, that's the totality, that's what I'm saying. Everything related to, it's all in the town's budget. So in that consolidated budget, it includes funding related to any activity, whether it's a board, agency, or the like, it's all in that aggregate number. So the salaries is for everything, you know, excluding the library. So we provide a grant to the library. It's, you know, we don't track, they track their own, and they have their own set of books. But the recreation facilities, the fire departments, it's all in the town's budget.
same would apply then for repair and maintenance? 'Cause I
Yes, it's
saw-
all there. Right?
So this is a rolled up number on page, this page here is a rolled up number from all of the committees, is that correct?
Right.
Oh, you're on,
It's a rolled up number of everything that's operated and staffed through the town. So if you look at that page on the expenditure page, salaries and benefits, that includes all the town staff, recreation, arena, fire department, everything. Now, when you go down to municipal operating grants, you know, that's where the contribution to the library is and the contribution to the museum and those type of things.
Okay, and this is, something is off because these notes don't align. So boulevard grass cutting shows up if you look at, you know, on page 14. What is that supposed to, where are those notes supposed to go? Because it doesn't make sense for us.
No, it is, no, let me explain that then.
Okay,
So that will be summer students, additional summer students' wages, but it's related to providing boulevard grass cutting. So, you know, we're just trying to show you a different view of how it rolls up in the budget. But that original tracking sheet is basically been moved over to that expenditure and revenue summary of where it's gonna actually hit in the budget line.
sorry, but the $185,000 more than we had budgeted, than we had spent in 2023, that can't be all for summer students. What's the 180, like we upped our budget by 100,
So if you go back to tab one, there's very detailed explanation of what's in that number.
what page are you?
So if you go back to tab one, on slide 41, that originally was 179,000, and it consists of these items. That's the changes in the budget.
So the 179, 370, which was the estimate, is now 185.
After the tracking sheet adjustments.
Yeah.
Are taken into account, it's now 185. Prior to that, it was 179. Now it's gone up because some of those items on the tracking sheet are,
so I asked about the 185.
Yeah.
And this was something from.
Oh, budget variance.
179, but then what's that additional, 5?
the items that are on the tracking sheet. So the tracking sheet is all the changes that council approved today. They're going to impact the original variance. So if you move that line up from 179 to 185.
So on slide 41 of the first one, it basically, the increase of 179,000 was due to the increase in rate changes to EI, CPP, WCB rate changes, 18,500, health and dental costs up 5,500, increments, 15,000, recreation salaries to reflect programming, 30,000, not provided currently, market adjustments of 75,000, and provisions for standby, call in, and overtime, 30,000. And then there would have been, to move up to 185, there would have been $6,000 in adjustments on the tracking sheet. And what was the tracking sheet?
Boulevard grass cutting.
Mainly Boulevard grass cutting first. No, the tracking sheet doesn't track it. It tracks the total cost. If this is what it's gonna happen. The budget that Shannon has done is categorize it. If it's city salaries, materials or supplies, like where is it gonna hit in the budget?
So that was an increase in service levels that council approved. And that 6,500 would be the additional cost of the boulevard grass cutting that we didn't have in 2023.
Okay, so these increases to benefits, is it because, who increased them? Did we change our plan, or was it just that level of,
Cost pressures mainly. So there's no change in the plans. It's all basically based on, like, there's a misconception how benefits work. Basically, benefits, life, LTD, it's all done on what's your demographics, how old are you? Everything else is based on usage. So staff use more dental, more drugs. We're gonna pay more premiums because it's cost plus. Right? So we can't go out and shop per se. We're getting the cheapest rates through AUMA because we're in a pool with 22,000 other employees. We're not getting a better rate if we go out and shop. So that's what's driving those. CPP, the government's made changes, and that's what the additional premiums are gonna be. Right? So
what's increments though?
step increases, so we start at the bottom. You know, a new employee, they start at the bottom. After 1 year probation, or after 1 year, they get a review. If they're satisfactory, they get bumped up to the next step on the wage rate. So again, any of the big shifts like recreation, basically the recreation budget last year was not correct. So we're making an adjustment that's reflected in the rec budget. And it was reported out in that more detailed document that the joint budget committee dealt with. So all the items have been captured in the overall budget, that's what I'm saying. And if it was significant, such as this rec one, the $30,000 item, council's been made aware of it through this summary report. You know, so, you know, we're in a transition year again. You know, Shannon's done a very excellent job putting the package together. We've noticed some changes that we want to make in the presentation documents next year. We'd be pleased to get council input on what other improvements council would like to see. But we're progressing. And I'm not, as far as I've seen, it's a different presentation, but I think it's giving council more information to make decisions on than this council's ever seen, so.
I can say I really like the tracking of anything additional and why there's an additional cost and the one-time usage or one-time fees and capturing those as separate so that they don't show up year after year and just increase. So those are two changes that I really appreciate, so thank you for those. And in terms of other issues perhaps would be, you know, an understanding of what was we have 2023 budget amounts and then 2023 actuals or anticipated actuals, because when this is done, the 2023 budget isn't done. Add those on would be good. And the other thing that I've heard from people is to be able to, at some point, show each department where they're at. For example, and not just the summary to say, here's where water is, here is where, each of the categories, and not necessarily all of the details, but just a high-level summary to say, this is where they're at, so you can look at costs for various departments and making sure that they're balancing. Those would be my two bits of feedback.
And whether it's at the April meeting, maybe or the next meeting, I'll bring back like sort of 3 examples of what a budget could look like. So there's an organization called Government Finance Officers of the United States and Canada. They appoint budget reviewers. There's 2 in the province of Alberta. I happen to be one of them. So I sit on that organization and develop tools on how councils, school boards, and the like should present their budgets. The challenge of doing that, I'd like to change the budget totally. The issue is we don't have the resources to do it. So that's the trade-off. In prior years, the treasurer spent basically 3 months preparing a budget, which meant bills didn't get paid. So what's the trade-off council wants? So that's the challenge in smaller municipalities. We don't have the capacity. We're not the county that has a director of corporate services, that has a manager of finance, and has 3 accounting analysts. We don't have that capacity. But we're probably doing a better job presenting the budget than the county does. So.
Who was on the library? Was that you? So you have 260,000 on the library for wages, for salary. Is that an increase from last year?
No, it can't be, because that's the goal.
No, has it increased? Was it 260 from 22? Was there an increase in salary for the library? Do you recall?
Well, it would be in the document, so let me just look to it.
Did you hear me?
Oh,
No, but do you recall? Has their salary changed?
we didn't talk about salaries, that's why I'm looking to see where you would have seen that.
It's on,
I
it's
see-
this page of the budget.
Yeah, I see it. And
So it was 260 for 2023 as well.
So there was no increase? No, it doesn't look like that.
0.
That's
So what's the question?
not quite correct, if I could, through the chair. They had vacancies, and they did a staffing readjustment. So again, it doesn't mean there wasn't an increase in the salaries. It's just reflecting what the anticipated needs are.
And then, so library falls under municipal grants, okay. Library and who else falls under municipal grants?
I mean, the external boards, the museum,
Okay,
those
museum.
type of things.
Okay.
Okay, is there, I guess, number one, what do we need coming out of today? Or is there any other Any other questions first, and then what do we need to do to sort of move this budget forward? Do we need another motion? I know we did approve a draft one, but do we need something that, since we approved it as summarized on page 13 and 14? Just wondering what we need to move forward. And while we're doing that, before we do that, is there any other questions about the 2024 budget?
So, yeah. So from what I'm quickly trying to figure out here, under salaries, so it would be an increase just for excluding fire and rec. There'd be an increase of 99,526 for town employees.
The increase for town employees would be the
17,000.
no, the increase in salaries for town employees is outlined on the slide under tab 1, and it's $75,000. So again, if you go back to tab 1, the change in salaries, I believe, is $75,000.
How come?
Well, and then there's also increments and there's market adjustments.
Right, so the market adjustments is the change in salaries for all staff, including fire and recreation.
Okay, so the fire budget, where is it here? Hang on. So fire increase 3,882. Rec increase 82,462. So I'm subtracting that from the 185. Am I doing this right?
What you're doing is tracking the change in the salary budget, not tracking the change in salary increases. So if you look at rec, as I said, there was a $30,000 error in the 223 budget. We had the staff person on board, but they weren't budgeted. So I don't know what your question is. If your question is what's in for salary adjustments for
Yeah.
staff, it's $75,000,
All departments across the board.
everyone. Right? So that equates to a market broadband increase of 2.5%.
Just give me a time out here. I can't figure that out. Because in the rec,
The 185 isn't the right number because that also includes benefits. If you're only looking for salaries, that's a different number.
yeah, but according to the rec
And all the
budget,
budgets are,
it's 82. So I
Is
can't
the
see.
rec budget's 82,000 and something else?
well, again, it includes errors that were not in the 223 budget. So like there's lots of technical issues that are in those budgets. And if you look at the rec budget specifically, during that rec committee meeting, we articulated, and it's in your package, what those would account for the change in
So the rec
aggregate
number
salaries.
is wrong, then you can pull that number. He's saying it's wrong, so that would be accurate to look at. 82 is not the right number.
Well, it is the right number in terms of the total change in the salary budget, but it's not related to staff, staff wage changes. It's related to all kinds of things.
So if George Brett committee
been approved by the joint budget, it's been approved by the joint recreation committee, it's been approved by the joint recreation budget committee. It's still before both councils.
Have you heard anything from the county on, do they have any issues with any of the joint budgets?
No,
There was, it just come into mind, we had the ICF, there was some requests there. Now, were those requests that they were looking at for the 24 budget, or were those for 25 budget? Both. Now, those haven't been reflected in this, have they?
so neither has the ICF capital grant been reflected.
In what way we don't have?
But we haven't shown it in the budget as a revenue source or how we're gonna apply it,
Okay.
right? Because that's still an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
So if I take that and that out of this. It comes to 95, right? Okay,
And then 75 is the salaries, the rest of it is, benefits.
okay, where did you find this?
Here. It's on the first tab.
Page 41, the first step.
It's delineated by, it's actually easier because it's salary separate, benefits separate, which is kind of easier to digest.
While she's looking up what I'm just looking up, business and training, what is that though, the 339,000? I know the additional 42 is for roads, training program, but those are some big numbers, what kind of business and training, what is that?
That includes like all the communication stuff, internet, health and safety programs, it's not worded that great. Let me leave it at that. So there's all kinds of other costs that are included in there, Chantel, help you. I got it, that's a fact.
Memberships are also in there.
Postage, telecommunications, advertising, the hodgepodge of stuff. Great.
And is roads training program something that starts to people this year?
Yeah.
And then professional services, that's a auditor, what is that?
It could be auditors, legal services, assessment service, engineering service, campground, extended professional consulting services. That services, computer program, insurance premiums. So a big item in there is insurance. I can't remember what our total insurance is, but it's a couple $100,000. Property taxes that we have to pay. So it's those type of items, so.
And supplies and materials, that, is there what kind of supplies and those, $1 million?
Well, I think I know what those would be. It would be things like the chemicals for the water treatment plant, asphalt, concrete, any of those,
Chemicals, cleaning supplies,
all that kind of stuff, right, that you use. And I know the chemicals for the pool water treatment plant. They're costly.
$250,000 just for the plant.
Sorry?
$250,000 just for the plant.
Yeah.
Were there any anomalies to highlight for any of the new 2024 project plans, or is everything standard like the potential forward?
Yeah, again, if we go back to those, based on the first half, 41 to 48, those are the driving issues in the changes of the budget. So we looked at salaries in terms of business expenses, up 37,000, big item there was, two big items. Internet upgrades, for all town facilities, an extra $12,000, and transitional costs related to the peace officer. Right? So that was a change. Professional services, the big items there, the insurance increase is 15,000, and, engineering fees 10,000, right? So the, the major increases, contracted goods and services, it's up $4,000 overall, right? Like hardly any increases. So the budget again was predicated on, unless the managers could justify an increase, it was up to 2023 budget level. Right, so you gotta remember inflation during 2023 was roughly 7%. This budget is nowhere near a 7% increase in these sort of purchase categories. Supplies and materials up 31,000 overall. 23,000 of that is chemical cost. Right, everything else is pretty well flat. Right, in some categories. You look at supplies and materials, supplies and equipment, machinery, we actually reduced the budget by $600. So if you want to look at the anomalies, here's the anomalies. Repairs and maintenance, we reduced the budget by $34,000.
Donna, what does DIP stand for under library?
I don't know, I'm not on the library.
Oh, yeah, never mind. Never
I
mind.
I can try and figure it out.
No, I got you mixed up with museum and library.
Yeah,
What page are you on?
It's on the budget summary.
Yeah, I saw that too, and I wondered what DIP was. Something
If you point it out, Counselor.
Is it page?
Oh, this thing, the new one, the one that we just got today. Page 13 or 14, whichever you prefer. It's page 14 in the blue, 13 in the white.
Requisitions library/DIP.
Yeah.
Expense summary?
This number is your one.
2,400.
Requisitions for the library staff.
That's called DIP, which is designated industrial properties. So we have to pay the province a fee for, they assess all the DIP properties, not our assessors, so we have to pay the province a fee. It's kind of modest, it's around $2,800, but that's what it is.
So what's DIP?
Designated industrial properties. So the province, I guess around 3 years ago, took over 100% control of assessing all that classification of properties. So they basically go back to municipalities for the cost of doing that.
Okay, I've seen that we're, I guess, running out of questions or around the budget. So again, I just wanna see where do we need to go to move forward, just to make sure, do we need to reapprove something, or do we, what we approved before?
As long as, all I need is the tracking sheet on page. Whatever this page is. We didn't approve these two separate pages, the operating budget summary and expenses.
Income and expenses.
Right. And that's what we would reflect in the operating budget. There would be one modification that we would make, is that 105,770 would then show up on the revenue line under property taxes. So that 105 would show as an increase in property taxes of 105,770.
Okay, so we'd have to collect a little bit more to make,
Yeah, it has a balance to zero.
we have to balance the zero. So that would be the net increase is 105,000, which is 2.6%.
Correct.
Gotcha. All right, well, I'm going to, anybody want to make a motion to approve, please?
If you wanted to be really, really technical, you can just approve these two sheets, or you could be really technical and say, have a motion to amend the property tax line by increasing it by 105,770, and then adopt as amended.
Yeah.
And then
And
just,
just do the expense page separate.
and do the expense page separate. So the, that excess of revenue and expenditures really is not, you're not approving that, so that line would come out. And the total summary of operating expenses, as detailed on that page,
Zero.
they'll be approved.
Yeah.
No, the total expenditures be approved.
Minus the excess deficit would be zero at the end of the day.
Right.
Okay, so motion? Anybody?
Just give us a preview of what it would sound like.
Okay, so we would say we'd start with the revenue page on page 13. That we would adjust the property taxes for 2024 from 4,093,180, and we would have to adjust it by 105,770, which is the deficit between the revenues and the expenses for 2024. And that 105,000 is the difference to balance the revenues and the expenses.
So we're adding 105,777 to the 4 million, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. So the motion would be that we would we'd make a motion to adjust the revenues on page 13 by 105,770 on the property tax line. And we would approve that amount. That's the motion, basically. So by adding that 105,770 to the property tax line, the difference would be that we would now have a budget that's balanced between income and expenses.
So a 2.6% increase only gives us that 105,000 deficit. That's all it's netting us. Is all we need is 105 to balance. and 2.6% is what's doing it?
So again, if you look at that total revenue number, again, through the chair, that total revenue number roughly 4 million, so 1% is 40,000. So that's what you need to balance the budget. So 1% tax rate increase is around 40,000 bucks of additional revenue, so that's basically
And we couldn't find 105,000 anywhere else. I mean, maybe I'm asking a rhetorical question here, but really, we couldn't find 105,000 anywhere else.
no. Again, like, we're talking about 105. If you go, it's, you look on this line here, you'll see we've increased our investment earnings by 65,000. We've increased other revenue items through user charges and the like. So we've been doing work to find savings. But at the end of the day,
Well, and we're also with that increasing a little bit of our contributions to reserves too, right, for the long run.
Right.
And I know as a council, we said, yes, we don't want to just, we want to keep putting money into reserves so that we don't have that infrastructure debt and start doing things like sidewalk replacements and road replacements and be able to fund some more of those. Okay, motion anyway. Nobody wants to make the motion?
I don't know if I can repeat it. Did anybody get that down? I can.
Did you?
Oh, perfect.
Okay, read what you'd have as a motion. You see
Yeah.
It's a very brief one, just to adjust the property taxes from the 4 million to, it would be 4.198. With the addition of the 105,770.
Okay. So we approve the revenues on page 13 with the alteration of adding the 105,770 or with the change. Everybody understand that one?
No, I'm not, well, both sheets have equal zero at the end of the day.
Yes, revenues and
No.
expenses have to balance.
The 2024 budget sheets have to balance, so that number has to be balanced to 12,272,641. So that's the second page. If you go to the second page, if council's approving the budget without any further changes, the balancing number is what's on the expense sheet, 12,272,641. So that means the revenues have to be increased by 105,770. So it basically, if I could, what I would suggest is the property tax item be increased by 105,777. And the total revenues be approved at 12,272,641 as detailed on page, whatever this is. And the same thing with the expenditures. The expenditure total of 12,272,641 be adopted.
We'll do two motions.
Yeah.
Okay, so. If we pass that, but if we pass that motion, we can't adjust the next one. Are we gonna talk about salaries, like, are the salaries just gonna keep increasing? We used to debate salaries in COLA before.
Well, we did talk about salaries and COLA. And this year, when we had it up and saying, what do we want to do? And we agreed on the $75,000 for market adjustments. That's what we had agreed on,
For the 2024 or 2023?
2024.
Oh. So once those market adjustments are made, this will come up for debate in the next budget? Or is it just a continuous, it's just gonna be added on without any debate?
Well, next year for 2025, wages can be discussed again, absolutely. They will be discussed again. But the baseline sort of starting point will be with that increase on it.
So just for the council's refreshment, was a market review done? There's still a significant number of jobs that are way below market. So again, this 2.5% increase will not be across the board. Some staff will be getting less than 2.5, some staff will be getting more than 2.5, but it will be managed within that envelope. So the staff that are more significantly below market will get a bigger increase. But overall, there's still a significant number of jobs that are below market. And that was the data that I presented earlier on this year when council debated the market adjustment allocations. So council will have that discussion again in the next few months.
So do we not have two market adjustments? Because I remember a different number other than 75, wasn't it like 102 or 120 or something?
Right, that was last year, but council approved a 4% market adjustment,
Last year. And so this year, what percentage is it?
2.5%. But
Okay.
again, that 2.5% is the market adjustment, and I encourage everyone to say it's 75,000, because some staff will not be getting a market adjustment, and others will be getting a market adjustment.
How many staff do we have in total?
Well, how do you want to count it? So that's like full-time staff, or,
No.
you know what I mean? Like,
How many full-time staff do we have?
and then how do you want to count that? We have vacancies. So approved positions, let me check that number, because it's still, so to be honest, like, we don't have enough budget for the approved positions that are on the org chart. So the budget doesn't fund the approved positions. So there's vacancies in some areas and the like, so if I could report back on that. But in the last 2 years' budgets, last year's budget and this year's budget, we have deleted 3 positions.
Because there should be a savings from not having a treasurer.
So we have an alternate position filled.
But is the CFO, I'm saying that right, position, is that still vacant?
It's a vacant position,
Okay,
but we have a financial coordinator.
so the financial coordinator, I don't even know how to ask this. So there's no savings then?
Well, there's marginal savings because of differential in the steps. The former treasurer was at a higher step than the alternate position, so there's minor savings, but that's been incorporated in the budget.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor from Therese to approve the revenues with the adjustment of property taxes of that 105,770 on page 13, right? One less questions before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And moving on to page 14, the expenses.
Wait a minute.
Oh, okay,
Oh, okay, page 14.
Yeah.
Or 13.
yeah, so or 13, because there's two numbers on it, yeah. But we're looking at, I think the motion would be we approve the 2024 expenses at $12,272,641 as presented on page 14. Okay, basically, we're looking at the expense sheet.
I know, but at the end of the day, we want it to say zero.
No, yeah.
Well, I know what you, okay.
So we're saying this is what we're approving on the expense page is 12 million, that number,
Okay.
that's what we're gonna say. We took this number and at the end of the day, the total revenues is going to equal 12,272,641 because we added the 105,000.
So this is gonna say 12,272.
Now, let me just make sure I'm looking at revenues, yeah.
So, right? This is what it's gonna say.
Yeah.
This is.
That's right. So this number and this number are the same, so there is a zero here. You know, between the revenues at 12,272,000 and the expenses is the same number. So in essence, the expenses and the income balance. That's what we're saying. Anybody like to make that motion? Nobody, everybody's quiet.
Well, it's a lot to digest.
Yeah. Nobody, I'll make the motion so that we can move on. That we approve the 2024 budget with an expense of 12,272,641 as presented on page 14.
And, okay, the question is,
Okay,
the tax rate increase is 2.6%.
that is an approximate. It might change slightly based on when they come up with the final assessment. Yeah.
So there's two separate steps. Council will be approving the budget with an estimated tax rate increase. But until the tax rate bylaw is done, the actual tax rate is unknown. So they're two separate processes.
But it's going to be very close to 2.6%. You know, give or take, what, 0.1?
Technically, I have mechanisms to make it exactly 2.6.
Okay, yes. So it'll be right around 2.6. But that'll be defined in the tax rate bylaw at the end of the day. All right, seeing no more questions, I made the motion to approve the expense part. All in favor? Carried.
Done?
No, there was another, yeah, there was 3.1 on the adjustment, or the addition to the agenda was the 3-year operating and the 5-year capital update.
So if I could just, what I'd like to do, even though these motions have been adopted and all that, I'll still do a transmittal report, putting it together in one RFP. So that's the RFP that in effect pulls it all together. But right now, it's kind of piecemeal. So I'll be doing an RFP that is basically summarizing it all and providing some narrative to hopefully have the public understand what's driving the budget, the communications and all that. But it's all reflected on these motions that council's approved, so that nothing's gonna change. It's just pulling it together in one RFP and having the tables there to help the auditors, to help staff understand what's going on and the like. So that will be happening.
3.1.
So we, under the MGA, a few years ago, they basically put in a new mechanism that are changes saying municipalities must now, there's a 3-year operating budget, which means 224 and 3 years out. So it's really a 4-year outlook, current year plus 3 years, has to be presented to council, and the same thing with the capital. Current year plus 5 years out. I'll be preparing that and I'll be making certain assumptions. So, we're gonna be assuming that, there's this level of wage increase and this cost of gasoline is going up and benefits are gonna go up. So all that will be built into a forecast. Council was basically just adopting this as a planning tool. There's no commitment by council to actually implement any of it, because things will change and budgets will change. So for instance, leasing costs are probably going to go up 10% a year in the next 4 years. Well, we got to build that into our forecast. So there may be interest rates will be going down over the next 5 years. So we will lose interest rates. So those are the types of things that will be built into the forecast and will be documented of what the assumptions will be in the forecast. Right? And same thing on the capital program. Here's the schedule of potential projects that are being done over the next 5 years, but it doesn't really mean anything. This council has to adopt the annual budget and can change it during the budget deliberations. But council has an obligation to approve these 3 and 5 year forecasts, and they don't even have to be balanced. So so on the operating budget, we may be showing a deficit every year on the forecast, and that's fine. But council has to receive some documents, so.
Well, and I think the other part of that is it can be posted so people can see the longer term outlook for the town and why, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, just as an aside, we can attempt to give an example. You've seen some of those municipalities that have already implemented significant tax increases. You don't want to see their 3 and 5 year forecast, because their 3-year operating forecast, in the majority of them, the trend and the baseline, all these forecasts are 5% tax rate increases for the next 3 years. We'll probably come in lower than that, but other than not saying it's right or wrong, it all depends on the circumstances of your municipalities, how much you have in reserve, how much you have not. But municipalities are hitting the wall now as people are doing their asset management plans and the like. People are hitting the wall and they can no longer defer putting money in. So for instance, at the RMA, or the workshops, if you want to refer to that, there was RMA has hired a consulting firm to start going through the infrastructure deficits by class. So they're starting with bridges and culverts, based on the data that the consultants put together. All the counties, they're short $132 $2 million a year in funding to maintain that one class of assets. So I know, for instance, one of the other municipalities I worked at, we did that analysis, and they had 116 bridge structures. So the counties generally have a lot of bridges and major culverts. Well, they're currently reviewing decommissioning 12 of those bridges because they just can't afford to maintain them. Yeah, it's gonna be havoc for those that can have direct, now your 10-minute drive is a 20-minute drive, but, you know, they're making those decisions to manage the issue. So anyway, so that's what you're gonna see shortly.
Okay, any questions on that? Nothing? All right, so with that,